Looking for a home that keeps you connected to Silicon Valley without the usual barriers to entry? The Gates in Morgan Hill by City Ventures is a walkable neighborhood near downtown restaurants, outdoor trails, and an easy commute to the Bay Area. It's a small town setting with access to major career hubs. Every home is all electric with buyer-owned solar included. With limited availability, now's the time to take a closer look. Discover your new home at cityventures.com. That's cityventures.com.
One thing I've noticed about Azure Standard is that it changes how you think about your home. Instead of running out for one thing at a time, you start thinking about abundance. A well-stocked pantry, a thriving garden, meals shared with family. It's a different approach to living. Explore what Azure Standard has to offer at azurestandard.com and shop this month's Waves of Abundance deals. Azure Standard, family owned and operated. Shop today at azurestandard.com.
Alright guys, welcome to the show. I hope you sat there, either fucking scantily clad or dressed in your World Around You branded clothing. If you're not, go to worldaroundyou.com, order yourself a t-shirt, listen to these shows, and then come back to these shows when you've got your t-shirt and listen to the show in your t-shirt. Anyway, I'll let you crack on with the show. Alright guys, I'm the World Around You, and this is Pause for Thought on Threshold FM, and this week we're talking about something that's better left unsaid. Now, it's not Candyman, it's not Biggie Smalls or Hail Mary or, whatever it is you can't say into a mirror 3 times. Sometimes it's something that is said, though by some people, it often gets a lot of people in trouble. Sometimes. No, it's not the N-word. In fact, it's not any form of slur at all, though I bet there is one somewhere that makes you slur your speech, I would imagine. Because, sometimes these things are caused by objects. Sometimes they're a particular phrase or song. Some of them are apparently hereditary and all. Because this week, we're going to have a look into curses. And that, things that curse people. People that have been cursed. But before we get into it, let's have a song. This is Overdrive by iRes, Tech9, Krishna, Joel Ortiz, Twister, Busy Bone and Afro. So, there's loads of words associated with curses or synonymous with curses. You've got jinx, hex, malediction, malazon, execration. Probably pronouncing these are awful. There's a lot of vowels in these. Anathema, commination, imprecation. And they all seem to mean the same thing, innit? Unlike curse words such as shit, piss, knob, fuck, cunt, twat, bastard, arse, bollocks, shat, cock, wanker, arsehole, dick, bitch, bugger, bellend and wank. They all mean very different things. Now, to be fair, shat is just the past tense of shit. Piss stands on its own in that list. Knob, dick and cock, the same things. Bellend is a more specific part of the dick, knob or cock. Cunt and twat, same things. A wanker is just somebody who's having a wank. Fuck means getting your end away. Bastard is a person without a father, which seems a bit of an outdated swear, really, because a lot of people don't seem to know their dads. Arsehole is a very particular part of the arse, and bugger is something that you do up an arse. And I think we've gone through all them words there and explained what they all mean, just in case there was any, sort of under 10s listening maybe. I don't know how or why you're doing that, but it's probably best to turn it off. But still, if you've not learned them words before, you've learned them now. Now, well, some of those, right, as I said, they can mean more than one thing. For example, a bitch could be a female dog, or it could be a woman that you've took a bit of a dislike into. What else have we got? Cock could be a chicken that you could make fight another chicken. It could also mean penis. What else do we have in the list? Dick is a type of dessert in our house. But if she's not feeling it, then you can also have it as some form of cake or a type of fish, maybe. So there are different words for them. Knob as well. Knob. You got door handles. That's a doorknob, and a knob as in a penis. But some of them can even be a term of endearment, like cunt. You call someone, you little cunt. that's, it's all about how you say it. So you are like, you little cunt. You're like, that's nice, but, you fucking little cunt. You've added a little bit of something to that, and that makes it bad, doesn't it? Bugger off as well. That's an okay one. I think kids can say that. I think kids can say shit and piss as well. Bitch. Don't know what else it is. You little wanker. That's not overly aggressive. You know what I'm getting at though. Some of them are endearing, some of them are nice, depending on where you are, innit? Which, I don't know where to go with that. But a curse itself is never endearing, innit? On the whole, which ironically about half of those words that I was listing, they all tend to relate to holes, which is weird that we name people things to do with holes on our bodies. Again, to go through the words, shit and piss come out the holes, knobs have a hole, you fuck in a hole, a cunt has a hole, a cunt has a couple of holes, a twat has a couple of holes, bastard is someone wholly without a father, an arse has a hole, bollocks don't, to be fair, you shat out of a hole, a cock has a hole, a wanker, not really. There's a hole involved towards the end, but not really so much. Arsehole, clues in the word. Dick has a hole. Bitch, not particularly. Bugger, you bugger a hole. Bell end has a hole, and wank, as we agreed with wanker, has a hole. Now that is weird. Now I tried to find some good curses in it, and unless you're whichever end of the sadomasochism spectrum is the one end that likes bad stuff happening to them, then there's not much to look forward to if you do ever get a curse laid upon you, innit? But in the simplest of terms, a curse is like a wish. But instead of blowing your birthday candles out and hoping that your dick will get bigger before the end of puberty, instead of wishing for that, you kind of wish for someone's dick that you know to shrink to make yours look bigger. So you curse that person to have a smaller penis because you wish for a negative thing, if that makes sense. But it leaves you asking, innit, who's the fairy godmother that removes the odd centimetre from a friend's penis? Some people turn to religion to make the peoples they hate's willies shorter. Now, most people hate their children, innit, and have their children's penises mutilated at a very early age, especially in America and some other underdeveloped areas of the world. But over here in England, if you want to make a wish for someone's pecker to lose some length, then you're going to have a couple £100 tucked away, and like a weird mate and that with a cigar cutter, or just go the old-fashioned way of speaking to the gods. Now, gods is a loose term, innit? It could be a god, it could be a goddess, it could be a god with a capital G, it could be the Fae, or a spirit, maybe even a demon, which, as we've learnt, could be an alternative dimensional alien, in which case you've got to wonder if the theories about the Americans being in cahoots with the aliens is true. Because we know that they're mutilating little boys' knobs all the time over there in America, so what are the aliens getting out of this other than a steady supply of fear and emotion that we've learned that the interdimensional aliens need to survive, and also the very, very fresh human DNA that's barely had the chance to shrink, because the DNA strands wouldn't have replicated that many times, meaning there's going to be almost a full sequence of human DNA there. Maybe it's the perfect thing to hide these creatures, though. Like, maybe they need it in order to develop the skin suits, and being possibly reptilian in their corporeal form, these interdimensional creatures may not be able to actually maintain their own body temperature, so by making a skin suit out of skin that's known to shrink and expand in altering climates, it could be the perfect insulator for such a species. Now, it may also go a long way to explaining the weird smells that can often be associated with alien sightings as well, because if you think about all those foreskins and that being collected, there is going to be a smell. But this is just pure speculation. What do we know about curses is the question. And as I said, it's like a wish, but a wish for bad luck rather than for someone else rather than something good. Now, I do keep saying now, which is weird. But there are times where you'd need to visit the smartest person in town, who would often be, the local religious fanatic, or the witch, or the warlock, or the shaman, and they would probably charge you money to lay a curse on somebody. Now, in my opinion, this proves that these people were the smartest people in the town, because that's a hell of a fucking thing to commoditise, isn't it? Now, I've tried selling good luck on eBay, and I got in a little bit of trouble with eBay. They didn't like it at all. I was just sat there in my butchering gear with my thumbs up, trying to fucking sell 55p's worth of good luck. They didn't like it, but back then you didn't have all these rules and regulations, people are right, there's too many rules and regulations now stopping us from making money off stuff. But if you think about, if you are these shamans or witches and that, you gain more power in the town by learning about all of these people vicariously. I want to curse Jeff so that his wife's next child is born with a serious, debilitating physical condition. Oh, and why do you want to do that, may I ask? Because he's my child and I don't want it to grow up and look like me and have people asking questions and upsetting my barren wife. See, with that there, right, that's what's gone on here, and why this imaginary curse is getting, not imaginary it doesn't happen, but this hypothetical curse is being laid down on these people in history. So now the spiritual leader knows that there's a pregnant woman who puts out easily. He knows this guy's wife might be lonely and emotionally neglected and quite possibly an easy shag. Plus, there's very little chance of a kid popping out if she does let you have a go on her. Plus, you have potential blackmailing material in order to make this bloke do you a favour. So he's in a position of power there. But sometimes there are curses that are laid by making booby traps. Like with, I learned a little bit about African American hoodoo style curses. Now, I'd never heard of the word hoodoo before, and I did initially think it was a typo, because obviously, and you're self-aware, you probably know, you've probably heard of voodoo. Just thought it was a typo, but apparently it's a mixture of Islam, Christianity, and spiritual beliefs that came from the slave trade surrounding the people that were taken from a very particular area of Africa, apparently. But what I read makes it seem like there were a few belief systems that came about in that time, and they all seem to have influences from the people's original belief systems and the belief systems that were being forced upon them in slavery. But it seems like they were able to use these, though, to their advantage in it by making something called foot track magic, which it seemed to use an item that had a curse laid upon it, that once it got triggered, and it got triggered by, I think someone had to step over it, not step on it, but pass over it, and it would then curse the person that was stepping over it. Kind of like shit-smeared tiger traps in Jungle Warfare, but a lot more tactical, playing the long game rather than just skewering unsuspecting people on shit-smeared sticks. Now, other curses would be made to attack industry, though, like the Germans, who would use curses that made cows stop producing milk, which doing that wouldn't just stop milk production, but also cheese, yogurt, ice cream, butter, maybe margarine. I don't know how it's made. And according to some supermarkets that I've visited, though, as well, and food pyramids that I remember seeing as a kid, eggs as well. But that's not the only impact the lack of lactation amongst the bovine population could cause. Now, if it had continued forever or become much more widespread, we may have all died from smallpox, because it means that large-breasted women in dungarees wouldn't have been squeezing others, developing a biological resistance for Edward Jenner to magically save his scientific reputation on that fateful day when he was asked by a farmer, "Why are you smirking at that woman who's milking that heifer?" Anyway, let's have a song. This is Can't Take That Away by Brother Ali. Alright, mate, just a quick little advert for myself. If you're enjoying this, fucking join the Patreon, mate, if you can. For a little as a quid, 2 quid, 3 quid, tenner, whatever you want to throw on there, you get the same stuff either way. Obviously, it's nicer if you put like 3 quid on rather than a quid, because I'll only get like 75p out the quid, but still it's 75p more than what I'm getting now. It's just you get access to video versions of these, discounts for canvases and maybe some other little bits off my website, and you get access to the PDF versions, that's the digital download versions of my books. Anyway, I'll let you get back onto your show. So getting proper into curses now, we've gotten through what they are and that. I wanted to think of the most famous curse I could to get us going. So that means it's actually a mixture of 10, and we could do it like a little top 10, like in 10, at 9, at 8. Coming in at number 7. But I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep count of them. But we'll try. I mean, we can probably try. I can't be arsed. But either way, you've probably guessed by now, it's the plagues of Egypt. And they seem pretty curse-like, and they seem to get referred to as curses. So almost like the people of Egypt were living in a simulation, though, and someone modded the game to make it go all weird and try and make some YouTube videos out of it. That's what it would be like if it was to happen in modern day. That would be the modern day interpretation of these things happening. I'm pretty sure. But we'll start with number 10. Which was turning water to blood, which realistically is just a visual glitch that I imagine would be quite easy to do would this be happening in a game. But the question is, what actually happened here? Did God or whatever or whoever that is, be it fucking Yahweh, Jehovah, Zeus or Osiris, I guess, did they actually transubstantiate water? Or did whatever God is manage to change everyone's perception of the water a little bit like the grey aliens' perception filters of modern times? Now with this as well, all of the fish supposedly died and the people weren't able to drink the water, so it could be that something that I've actually presumed is responsible for a lot of curses growing up and especially in more recent years, both of ancient times and contemporary times, radiation, mate. Could it be that the person getting about calling themselves Lord in these stories was just an alien that was maybe in over his head, pretending to be a god, giving the people what they wanted, and he just used some of his spacecraft fuel to poison the water? And this isn't the first time, though, that a religious character has turned water into a red substance. Because if you remember, not to suggest you were there, but if you do remember anything you know about Christianity and not, Jesus turned water into wine at a party and then again a lot later in life. And the wine was that good, right? He ended up hammered up the top of a hill. But what if this is some form of miscommunication? Because we know that this sort of carries on, and we now allow paedophiles in dresses to tell us that they're turning wine into blood. So what if that's what Jesus was doing? What if that was his goal, to make people, as in actual humans, ingest alien DNA? So that their DNA could be altered. Now, could that be how DNA manipulation actually works and they don't actually do it inside the moon? Could we have been wrong about that? And I mean, I'm not saying I am wrong. I'm not saying I am wrong about that. I'm just saying we could be. And there is a bit of credibility to this, because we've got to take into consideration that, well, everything I'm suggesting, really, because many believe that the world's first vampire and or maybe lichen, depends what you read, but werewolf, lichen, werewolf, the vampire or werewolf stories stem from that night, because Jesus made people eat his flesh and drink his manly juices before he played with all the toes in the kitchen, and I think he also kissed a man, I think he said he was going to kiss the man that betrayed him, and I'm pretty sure he did it with tongues as well. At least our teacher used to show us that when we was a kid. I always thought it was weird that Jesus and his disciples were always topless as well, and severely underdeveloped. But I could be wrong. Either way, that man he shared an intimate moment with. That was Judas, and the man who sold out the possible alien fugitive, Jesus, to the people that we learnt about in the Robots and Automatons episode, where they were in control of some form of metallic army of machines, aka the Romans. And then he went and hung himself off of a tree by a full moonlight and became the world's first vampire or werewolf, dependent on whichever you believe in more. Now, with his insatiable appetite for alien blood, he then set out on an adventure all across the world, fortifying castles and eventually conquering the known world under the guise of different business aliases, but most likely that's going to be in our distant future, so probably not best to dwell on right now, and it'd all be conjecture anyway. Now, the second of the 10 plagues, so that's number 9, was to release a shit ton of frogs around the place of Egypt and that, which helps build a very different Egypt of the Egypt I'm aware of, at least what's depicted in games and films and things like that. Now, we do know though that God is cruel, nasty, but he supposedly loves his animals and that, innit? So you have to imagine that back then Egypt must have at least had the ecosystem necessary to allow frogs to survive. Wetlands, shrubs, even the odd potted plant or a bit of a natural pond here and there, rather than what I imagine is nowadays just a harsh desert. Now, this seems a little bit more advanced, and maybe it means something else, and it could be a mistranslation, but let's take it at face value than turn it into what would be quite possibly a xenophobic rant against the French, because we know that the French weren't to invade Africa until around the 1600s, so it's obviously got naught to do with those and everything to do with the obviously alien metamorphosizing creatures that can survive in water or on land, known as frogs. Now again, more evidence of this taking part in a simulation or a video game. Now, I've played games, right, where I've gone back to them after a few months and suddenly there's new creatures and new things happening in it because of a patch or an update. Like one of my favourite games that I like to play called Alpha Genesis 1. And if the listeners hear the people that made that game, then fucking fair play, I quite like it. It's a lot of fun. You're in charge of a spaceship, but you'd know that anyway because you made it. Anyway, so the idea that our war overlords could manage to script in some code to make some frogs all of a sudden, and they're everywhere. It does seem quite possible, innit? Like, at least to me, going off the basis of some people believe we're in a simulation or a video game, and if you imagine like that, then that's all things are, then it's quite possible that something could, or at least a higher being has that sort of control over us. Maybe it's not a simulation, but from where they're looking, this isn't real, so they can do that. And it's possible. And then we've got number 8, which is actually the third plague if we're going in chronological order. Because that's what we're doing, we're going in chronological. We'll drop the countdown because it doesn't make any sense. It's doing it in reverse order but the wrong way. So it's in the right order but with the wrong numbers. So number 3, and it might get under people's skin, this one, because it's ticks or lice or gnats. Little bugs anyway. It was little bugs, wasn't it? I can't remember which exactly. It might have been a mixture of the 3, maybe. I know there was another one with bugs further down the line. And, the little bit I was going for there is ticks get under people's skin, but I mean lice live on them. And gnats hang around the Manchester Ship Canal on summer's nights. So very, very different ways we could go with this. But again, though, right, a gnat is another otherworldly creature. They live underwater for quite a long time, and then they live in the air for a shorter period of time. Like a fish can and all, except a fish can live underwater for almost its entire life and live on land for a much, much shorter duration of its lifespan. Although, to be fair, it is possible for very, very young fish to live almost their entire lives on land if you catch them at the right point in the life cycle, which is something to bear in mind. The next curse or plague we've got, so this will be plague number 4, is swarms. I might have gotten mixed up here, but swarms. The swarms were groups of animals and that in it, and maybe flies as well. Some people regard them as flies, which flies are still animals. But either way, they were made to attack the Egyptians and the livestock. Now, I was thinking this could be the introduction of some form of computer virus in it rather than a curse itself. But it does have all the bearings of a curse because this curse got lifted in it, and it seems like it got lifted quite quickly too, going off the records of it, because they wanted it gone because it was causing too much havoc, and they said, if you do this, I'll do what you want, says the Pharaoh, and then the Pharaoh doesn't do what he was told to do, so that brings in curse number 5. But maybe these weren't a curse though, innit? And maybe it was the introduction of the first homing creature. Not like the homing pigeon, they were just an early predecessor to instant messaging. I mean a creature that may have been genetically engineered to seek out certain genetic traces or traits. And this is why these creatures never harmed the Israelites at the time, just the Pharaoh and the Egyptians. Now, the next layer of this cursed buttery tort was a sweeping death that wiped out donkeys, horses, sheep, goats, cows, camels, most things with a hoof, to be fair. Now, maybe this was the developer thinking to themselves, I've gone overboard here with this animal patch, the system can't run all of this at once, all these graphics and that, and it's losing power. Still though, one hell of a curse that still occurs to this day, except it attacks locally owned business owners, otherwise known as farmers, and it's called swine flu, foot and mouth disease, and camel fever, one of the few films to actually be outshone by its sequel, Camel Fever 2. Anyway, let's have a song and then we'll carry on with the curse that plagued Egypt. This is Still Struggling by Raekwon. if you're enjoying this, right, do you know what you might like? You might like a fucking bollock boy, mate, which is a little robot with mouse testicles in. £6 on worldaroundyou.com. There's other stuff as well, you know, like mystery boxes and fucking things I've made out of rats and dead ducklings and that. So fucking give them a look, mate. The prices start at like fucking £1 for a piece of fossilised shell. And then prices vary going up. You can also get shirts and that as well from there. But go and have a look, mate, worldaroundyou.com. But I'm guessing if you've found this, you already know about all the taxidermy. But still, you know, maybe now's the time to treat your missus to a little mouse heart. You know, I don't know you, though. I can't tell you what to do. I'm just glad you're listening to the shows. I'll fucking let you crack on. The next plague, so I think plague number 6, maybe number 5, I think 6. The next plague was boils. Now, what happened there, they starts to get a bit airy-fairy in the middle, and some lad chucked some soot in the air near the pharaoh's head, and everyone became spotty. Which is a bit weird, you know, but I'm thinking it's got a bit more to it, innit? Like, what if the soot was able to affect the perception filter around the leaders, meaning that these creatures were actually a creature that seemed like a spotty person? Maybe like a lizard of some sort. We get spotty lizards in that, don't you? Meaning that the people could see what the pharaohs actually were. Maybe nothing to do with video games or simulation theory at all. Now, what if this is why, when the volcano went off a few years ago in Switzerland or wherever it was in Europe, and it wiped out transportation all around the earth because of fucking soot? What if that's why they were telling us you can't go to work, you can't go inside, because we'd be able to see all the other species, because for whatever reason, whatever's in this soot affects the perception filters from the greys? Then the curse took it up a notch, and God decided to chuck a load of hailstones about, big enough to kill everything they touched, and big flashes of lightning smashing off the floor, and thunder to go with it. And now it's starting to sound a little bit like a barrage of missiles from an alien warship. Then there's the more well-known ones. So that was actually number 7. So we was on number 6 with the boils. Now it's a strong finish, to be fair, from God here. Locusts to just fucking destroy everything, just decimate the land with locusts. Then total darkness for 3 days, almost as if, you know, some form of EMP or you know, someone cut the power. I don't know. Total darkness. I mean, the darkness could have come from an alien spacecraft being big enough to block out the sun. And then the death of the firstborn sons, which was the last one, that could refer to some form of war that took place between the alien warlord and the pharaohs. Maybe it's all been turned into allegory, but at the end of the day, it all seems like some form of confrontation to be able to take ownership of some slaves, which is pretty weird in a way. And maybe I've misinterpreted it, but I reckon an alien warlord would probably want some slaves, especially as we know that the Anunnaki were quite big into slaves, so why wouldn't this alien want slaves? But let's have a song. This is Trading War Stories by Tupac and the Outlaws. We can find some modern day implications of an ancient Egyptian curse too, because the curse of Tutankhamun, the curse of the mummy, whatever you want to call it. Now, you'll be surprised to hear that this isn't about people coming back to life and being covered in bandages, though it is about people leaving one world for another. Now, I'm not talking Stargates. There was a group of people, right, involved in the uncovering of King Tut's sarcophagus who managed to leave this mortal world for the world of the dead. But unlike the mummies in the films, like The Mummy Returns, or the Mummy Tomb of the Dragon King, these people didn't come back to this world. They stayed there because they died. Now, some scientists claim that these deaths weren't actually the result of a curse. Now, these scientists are scientists, not actual, like, scientists. You know, like, scientists. They're them scientists. Because they were claiming that these people shouldn't have been messing around with fucking 1,000-year-old dead bodies that have been left in hot climates, because they could be full of old bacteria and disease. But if science is to be believed, then we evolved alongside these bacteria, and that means we'd now be immune to their effects of this ancient bacteria. Otherwise, we'd just all be dead, wouldn't we? We would have died out if this bacteria could kill us. Other people have claimed that the deaths are totally random. Just accidents and that, and you know, there was thousands of people involved in this, and 7 of them have died, 10 of them have died. That's not enough to base this on. But how do we know there was thousands taking part? Scientists and so-called historians, we might as well lump them all in together. You know, liars could have just made up a story to try and trick us or to make us believe something that isn't true so that they can sell books on Egyptology and science books. And probably just so we don't fucking start saying things about them fucking rooting around in people's graves, especially like the old grave of Tutankhamun, you know, who's supposed to be a good leader and not. That's just what it is. They just don't want us to be associating him with King Tutankhamun's, you know, grave robbery or whatever we want to call. What do we call that? Excavation? Mission? Investigation, maybe. Tomb raiding. It'll be tomb raiding, I would have thought. Archaeology. No, archaeology's not nothing. There's not digging, are they? It was a breaking and entering, really, on an old building, wasn't it? So, and then they stole some stuff, so a burglary, I think, and messing with a dead body. The desecration of a corpse, right? They're trying to say that there's thousands of people involved in the desecration of a corpse. 1,000 people can't be involved in the desecration of a corpse. How the fuck does that happen? Yeah, 1,000 people can't go messing with a fucking dead body that's thousands of years old. No one would let that happen. No one. They don't even let... We learned in the dinosaurs episode that any that are supposedly real dinosaur bones, they don't even let people play with them. They keep them under lock and key. So why the fuck would they let them play with some form of ancient king, some almost mythological ancient king? It won't happen. There's only going to be a few people touching it, and more than likely they're all fucking dead. Now, other people, right? They seem to say that they're totally disregarding the ancient carvings that were said to be inflicting a curse on whoever messaged with the dead body of these ancient leaders. So they just overlook that. They're like, oh, we can't explain that with our science, so we're going to ignore that because we don't understand how that works. So we can't explain that away with fucking myths and stories of our science culture. So we're not going to even give it any credence, no time at all. But mummies, this isn't the only mummy that's caused the curse of some description, and it's not even just ones from ancient Egypt. There was the one that was found in Austria in 1991 called Otzi the Iceman. That led to the deaths of 7 people. Now, 4 of those people who were involved, again, not many people probably would have been handling the body in that. 4 of them, again, died in accidents, suspicious accidents as well, supposedly. And 3 died through other means, like illness or so-called old age and things like that, you know. But it seems to me that there's some form of link to ancient culture and the containment of the secrets that could be learnt from studying them. They don't want these people getting out and spreading the word of whatever it is they've learnt. But we can come to more modern day, a different curse that's got nothing to do with Egyptology or ancient people or dead people, right? The curse of the Crucible, which in a mythical part of England known as Sheffield, there's a curse that affects snooker players from all around the world. No matter how good that snooker player is, they can't keep hold of the world championship title after the first win of it. Everyone that's won it has either has never retained the title after the first win, but they can win again later on. Now that's weird. That seems like there's some form of curse corrupting the game of snooker. Now, I don't want to risk this show becoming too sport heavy, so we're not going to focus on that. We're going to stick to the science. Now, there is a scientific term that's used to explain away curses, and the word's nocebo, as in N-O-C-E-B-O, nocebo, nocebo. The opposite to our scientist actually explains away a wish, which is a placebo. But this all just seems like science using different words and terms to explain away the concept of willing something, otherwise known as magic, which I think we touched on a little bit when we learnt about Jack Parsons in the Greys episode, maybe. It's just scientists trying to change people's perception to make the world see the world through the lens of science. They explain away the very easy to grasp concept of a curse which anyone could understand and use, and wishes, and they try to complicate it with scientific journals and jargon and big words so that less people can understand it, meaning there's less knowledge out there. Scientists are just the modern day priests and shamans of old that I spoke of at the top of the show, the gatekeepers of reality, restricting people's beliefs and understanding of themselves and the world around them. One thing I was reading, right, was suggesting that cancer patients can suffer from a nocebo. If they have cancer, they can die by deciding that they're doomed and die before the cancer kills them. And scientists try to say, oh, this is because people try to explain the health drawbacks of having cancer treatment. But it's just mental. Like, they're making these people, oh, you're going to die, you believe you're going to die, you're going to die. Now, how's that different to a curse? If that could happen with a curse, I don't think either are explaining it particularly well here. Neither of them are. It seems to be that words have some form of power in it. Now, by having the idea, there's that word again now, by having the idea of this nocebo, it implies that people need to know about the curse for it to work. But if that's the case, then why were they so popular? Like, people wouldn't have used them, surely, and they wouldn't have survived as like a cultural phenomena and as a folklore story. How would people know that that was a thing if everyone had to know that they were cursed for the curse to work on them? Then all you've got to think to yourself is, I'm not cursed, and you're no longer cursed. But that didn't work. Surely, right? So it would come about, they'd order a curse in the olden times, fucking Cleanies magazine that'd get dropped off at the door, and they'd order a curse for a neighbour, right? And then bad stuff starts happening to said neighbour, whilst that neighbour it's happening to is completely clueless to the orderings of the curse, but they're still feeling the downside of the curse attacking them. But they don't know the curse, just bad shit's happening to them more than usual. Now, to believe what scientists are suggesting with a placebo and a nocebo, it means that as long as you didn't believe in the curse, then it wouldn't affect you. And if you believe that good stuff will happen, that will make good stuff happen. As far as I'm aware, right, that is literally the beliefs in magic. Not like Let's Hide the Sausage children's entertainer style magic, but Jimmy Savile and Aleister Crowley style magic. Some people, right, though, as well, there's another explanation that is out there for curses. There's been suggested that mass hysteria is the reason for curses and the reason why they work so well, and that media throughout history has a role in encouraging people to believe in the curse, making it worse. Now, you could break up mass hysteria to work out what it is. It's BBWs. It's big, beautiful wombs, isn't it? Mass, it means large, and hist has got something to do with wombs, because hysteria comes from women being mental, or something to do with the wombs acting up in olden times. That was where the word came from. And erectomy, I think, is to remove, and hist is womb, I want to say, just off the top of my head anyway. But surprisingly, scientists claim that women, right, are more likely to get involved with mass hysteria and believe in it. Also, right, they suggest that a low IQ means you're more likely to get sucked into mass hysteria. Also, they think that it affects children and teenagers more. So if you're sat there, or walking there, or working there, and listening to this, thinking that you're sat there thinking, oh, my girlfriend's a little girl who's thick as pig shit, then you want to be careful, mate, because they could be more likely to fall for mass hysteria. I mean, it probably also means you're a paedophile, and maybe the mass hysteria thing isn't your main concern, but it's something that you need to bear. Maybe not girlfriend. I didn't realise where I was going with that as I was saying it. If you're sitting there thinking, my kid's a bit thick, my little girl's a bit thick, my sister's stupid, my teenage daughter's stupid, my teenage sister's stupid, or even, they're the most likely, the little girls and teenage girls, but also, thick women, or just women in general, apparently, according to what I've been reading, seem more likely to get brought into mass hysteria and to perpetuate it, which I don't know how they found that out, but it's something to bear in mind. Now, all this gets me questioning something, and I've always thought it, right? Is a cold and a flu real? Because they've never found a cure for them. And I don't think, as far as I'm aware, I don't think they've ever been able to find the exact thing that causes them. So what if they're just some form of marketing exercise, a way to measure propaganda and its effect on the world? Because you don't really get many people having a cold in the summer months, but later in the year, around autumn and winter, people start to get a cold, innit? Around the same sort of time that TV gets inundated with adverts for cold and flu relief. So what if those adverts are a direct cause for colds and flus because people buy into the idea, right? And then, namely women, and that's why they invented man flu. So that people wouldn't realise it's mostly women with low IQs that are getting ill, and subvert the public's attention to make people think, oh, it's men pretending to be ill, when realistically, everyone's being coerced into pretending to be ill, but predominantly low IQ young women believing they're ill. Just as a thought experiment, but it's worth thinking about. Now, at the top of the show, I keep saying it, don't I? At the top of the show, right, I listed some well-known swear words, and we're not going to go back over them, there's no need, you know what they were. And they seem to also have magical properties, though, as well, those words, which, from my readings, might be why they're called curse or cursed words. There's been studies on pain to see if people can withstand more pain if they swear out loud compared to just if they say random words from a list that describe a fridge or a table or something along them lines. And it turns out that they could. Now, the experiment was they plunged people's arms into ice-cold, ice-filled water and made them hold their arm there to see how long they could do it until it hurt too much. And the people that were allowed to swear could last longer, basically, whereas the people that were just saying things about tables are hard, tables have drawers, cupboards get things put in them, they couldn't last nearly as long. Now, I would say those people were being able to concentrate on that list of words they were given, so you would think that would subvert the pain, divert the neurons, let's say, in the brain, and you not feel the pain because you're concentrating on something else. But that wasn't the experiment. The experiment was to see if them going, fucking hell, twat, like that, if that helped them more. And apparently it did. Now, that means that these words have some form of property within them that instills extra resilience in a person, almost like some form of incantation, which again would be magic. Some people believe that these words are purposely suppressed so that they retain their powers as well, because once these words become uncensored, apparently they start to lose their power. Another scientific cover-up that I found takes us back to King Tut again, and we won't dwell on it, but he was found with a shitload of gold around him, so obviously, we could go down the Anunnaki route and we could go on about the Anunnaki for a while, but we won't, because what's really important with this is that they found an iron dagger, right? Which was about 500 years too early for this was happening in the Bronze Age where King Tut was, and there was no other records of iron being produced around that time, especially as well, no iron, but it took a very long time for people start producing iron with no hammer marks or anything indicative of early iron working from 500 years later, or even up to 750 years later when they'd had 250 years to mess with iron. Now, what about when you find out that there's records of this dagger being referred to as a gift from the gods? Now, to us, gods is going to sound a lot like aliens, especially if you think back to the ancient Egypt creationism episode. Maybe interdimensional beings, but with this 500-year gap between iron manufacturing and the dagger, then what about time travellers? They'd seem godlike, innit, to these people, surely. And if a time traveller from 500 years in our future came to us, they'd seem like an alien or a god to us. They'd know so much more than we do. And it would just make, the stuff they would say would just make sense because they could prove it in an instance. Whether it be through magic or through science. Maybe I've been wrong about science, maybe I'm wrong about magic, maybe it's neither. But they'd know so much after 500 years of either of studying those things. Because imagine all the people over them 500 years all studying stuff and compiling all the knowledge. Look at all the knowledge we've got access to now compared to like 40 years ago, where it was much more limited, I would imagine, than what the internet now gives us. It could be that there are observers of our universe or dimension or planet, whatever your plane of existence, that decide to introduce something new every now and then to bring about a change, and many would call that being God. Or, at least God with a lowercase g, a God. And you can actually relate this dagger in Tut's tomb to God and the plagues that we learnt about earlier. Now, you can link it, not because of the dagger, but because of something else that was found in his tomb. It was a piece of jewellery known as the winged scarab. And many believe it to be made of chalcedony for a very quite a long time, to be fair. Which chalcedony is actually available from my website. It's like the naturally forming polyfiller for inside of quartz. It's proper colourful and that people you might like. It looks like metal. But anyway, in actuality, this winged scarab was actually desert glass, which is something that hadn't been made on Earth, at least through, as far as we know, until 1945 when the Americans started chucking nuclear bombs about. Now, the nuclear bombs and the explosions that they would cause would turn the silica sand in the deserts to glass. The exact glass that's found in the scarab. But if you remember back, the plagues with the hailstorm and the lightning and the thunder, right? that could easily have been some form of attack of bombs, and these bombs may have made these bits of glass, making it even more believable that God is actually just a nasty alien or an alien warlord. Maybe something from Mars. We're supposed to have had a war with Mars in the past, and if we believe Anatoly Fomenko that Jesus was in 800 years ago, then that would probably put the ancient Egyptians 1,000 and something years ago, not that long ago. Then 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, when the ancient Egyptians was, or 3,500 years ago, could easily have been when the Martian wars were. Just as something to leave you with, I guess. And maybe the same way that we use science, as in science, to explain the otherwise unexplainable, or at least the explainable that they don't want you to understand. Maybe back in the day, they explained aliens away with curses, and maybe that's all curses are. But that's all we've got time for this week, guys. I'll see you in a bit. Thanks for listening, man. If you enjoyed the show, you should probably go and try Truth Seeking. That's TROOF Seeking, as in like SEEKING, not like a fucking type of helicopter. But it's me and Jimmy Budd, a comedian from the UK, from England, like me. Don't know why I'm saying it like that. Either way, though, go and fucking have a listen. You can find one or two in the feed for this. There's the Crop Duster, but there should be by the point you're listening to this, at least 15 episodes going out for Truth Seeking. So you might enjoy that, mate, and fucking leave a review on here and that. Leave a comment if you've watched it on YouTube. And if you do have YouTube as well, you can actually watch some of these. You can have them playing on a loop, with my cartoon playing on a loop, whilst you listen to 4 or 5 episodes of it. So, maybe throw that on at night time or something, because that might help as well, because that might mean I can eventually monetize my YouTube. Anyway, fucking thanks for listening, man. I'll see you in a bit.
When was the last time you felt in control of your business finances? Expenses tracked, invoices sent, taxes ready. That's where Found comes in. Found brings your banking, bookkeeping, invoicing, and taxes together in one simple app. Manage expenses, invoice clients, send payments, and prep for tax time right where you bank. Join the hundreds of thousands who have already streamlined their finances with Found. Open a Found account for free at Found.com. That's FOUND.com. Found is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services provided by Lead Bank, member FDIC.